So I've got Tommy in Illinois has a question for us. Tommy, welcome to the show. How can we help?
Hello, Matt and Jenna.
Hello. That was a bell.
Wow.
That was my joke, Jenna Bell. Jenna Bell. I think when people say your last name, angels get their wings, right?
Except your last name's Belk with a K.
Oh, is it Belk? I thought it was Belk.
It's literally on the screen every time she's on the screen. So you set up an entire joke based on.
Oh, it's okay.
It's still. I think it's still funny, but
it sounds like Bell. I get that a lot. It's fine.
This is one of the disadvantages of being blind. I've never seen your show. I don't know what's on your screen. I only listen to you guys, so.
Well, we're glad you listen, and the Bell thing is, like I said, still funny. But what it means is that we need to do a better job of enunciating for people who aren't sighted.
Well, now we all know it's Belk, so no one will make that mistake again.
I'm sure they will. What's going on, Tommy?
How can we do this, Tommy?
So, hey, I have a question for both of you, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You were both theists at one point. You both believed in God, the Christian God.
Yes.
And then you, in your search for God, you couldn't find sufficient evidence to support your belief, and therefore, by default, had to move to atheism because you're still awaiting for evidence. And I'm wondering, as I had the same experience, and thank you, Ken Ham, for doing that for me, because the more he spoke, the more I became unconvinced. If you're still in that search mode, I shouldn't say search mode, or that hope mode. And I can only speak from my own experience, so let me start there, and hopefully that will frame the question a little more. For myself, I am 99.9999% certain there is no God, as has been described in any of the religious texts that I have been exposed to, such as the Bible and the Quran and the Book of Mormon and Mishishkapo and so on.
Cool.
Shango,
that's it. That's probably more confident than I am.
Okay, so there's my point. So there's that percentage of non-confidence, right? Because we can't be 100% of anything, really. So would you say that you're still open to evidence? If the evidence appeared, you would say, okay, this is definite evidence. Are you still driven by, poorly formulated question here, are you still driven by that small percentage of possible? It's possible. Even though I just can't see how it's possible, it could still be possible because I can't, my limitations cannot define reality. Let's put it that way. Just because I can't see how something can be doesn't mean it cannot be. It just means I cannot see it.
Is your question, do we still hope to find a God?
Not so much hope, but do you still consider yourself searching in your atheism?
Yes.
We literally do a call-in show almost every week asking for people to present what they believe and why. I fail to see what more I could do to demonstrate that I'm still open to having evidence presented.
Well, that doesn't necessarily need to be evidence of a search. That could just be evidence of having a show and providing a service to other people who are searching.
So
that might not need to speak directly to your belief.
Do you know how you get on this show?
How I got on the show?
Do you know how a person gets on a show such as the Atheist Experience?
As a host or as a
yes, as a front-facing host.
As a host. No, I don't know your host process.
Neither do I. But the fact is that if I was no longer sincere in my questions, if I was not being honest, I don't believe that I would still have a place
Right.
on this show.
Nobody would. Because the type of person who's not open to that is someone who says, I'm 100% convinced that no God exists. You guys are all wrong. My reason for doing this is to expose that you're wrong. Basically, if God is ultimately unfalsifiable, then anyone who claims to have falsified the unfalsifiable is as ridiculous, if not more so, than the people who have claimed to have found a God. At least those people just have bought into bad evidence or fallacies, so far as we can tell. But if you claim that you've falsified the unfalsifiable, you are wholly irrational. Do I think it's likely that I'm going to get good evidence for a God? No. Do I hope that I do? No, because I kind of hope there's not a God based on what I've heard about various gods and things like that. But if someone had good evidence, that's what skepticism is, which is why the people on this show don't say, oh, well, we've disproved God. Nobody's ever said anything like that. Every week it's call and tell us, and you have legitimate conversations with the people who can, and you move on from the people who can't.
And there's been a lot of conversations with people who have called to say that there is, in fact, no God, and that's been disputed as well.
Well, yes, as you said, you cannot falsify such a position.
Right, but my point is that the position that we're taking, which is a skeptic position about it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think you get where we're going.
Okay.
Correct?
So it would seem like, if I understand you correctly, I'm just recapping to make sure I get this correctly. You're both still open to the idea of a God, and that your atheism is not an endpoint. It is a step in your journey.
Yes, for me.
And not only that, but over the years, I've argued that atheism, in the sense of not being convinced that God exists, is the default position, because the burden of proof is on those who are claiming a God. This wasn't it's not like I started off as a Christian and graduated to atheism. I started off as an atheist, just like everybody else, and in the loosest sense, not in how it's used in activism and stuff. But I started off not being convinced that God exists. Someone convinced me that God exists, and then later I found out I was convinced for bad reasons, so I could not continue. It's not like I chose atheism. It's not like I said, well, I'm done with that God thing now. At some point I was convinced. Now I'm no longer convinced.
No.
I'm open to being convinced again if somebody has evidence and argument.
Yeah, you've thrown your wool down on the floor, so to speak, and you're saying, God, either make it wet or dry.
Well, I haven't. All right. So how can we help?
You're looking
what's the question we're trying to get to?
Well, that was it. I was just looking to see if your atheism was part of your. Well, I'm confirming for myself through conversation with you if your atheism is an extension of your journey of looking for God, and if it wasn't just a termination point, so to speak, that. Can
I ask why that matters?
Because I see myself the same. I see myself in that venue, that I believed in God, and the more I looked for evidence, because I wanted to believe something real. I didn't want to believe a fantasy. So I was asking and searching, reveal yourself, make yourself known. And it just wouldn't happen. And the more I searched, the more I realized it just wasn't going to happen. And I said to myself, and I said to the God that I was departing from, that, hey, you are not making yourself known. There's nothing I can do to affect this. That's evident to me. You have to find me. And if you can't find me, then you just don't exist.
Well, that's a fallacy.
Yeah. So I gotta.
It's fallacious for you. It's fallacious for you to conclude that God doesn't exist just because God didn't answer your prayer.
Right. So that's what I was going to single out, was that you said that you're not going to believe it. Hold on. No. I'm commenting on something that you had already said, which adds on to Matt's point. It's okay. It's all right. Just stop talking. It's okay. Basically, you've said that you're not going to be convinced or you're not going to find it. And that kind of brings me to, just to give you an example, I got a tattoo of a cross because that's the one thing about me that was never going to change. And now I've learned my lesson from that because I don't know what's going to change about me at all. I don't know. So I can't say.
And I'm genuinely baffled at how someone could be a frequent listener to the show and be asking the question that you're asking. Like, hey, are you guys still open to having evidence presented? Like, I don't know how anybody could be a regular listener to the show, or I've listened many times to hear us talk about skepticism, burden of proof, nature of evidence, all of these things, and then be like, oh, are you guys still open to having evidence presented for God? That's literally what we do here every week.
Well, I binge listened to probably 100 of your shows over the last month. I found you guys about a month ago. And I binge listened to you, and I listened to, about 100 shows at this point.
Is there anything else that we can answer for you?
No, other than I just want to clarify, when I said you don't exist, there's more to that thought. It's either you don't exist or you're being a dick.
Sure, but okay. As I've said many times before, if there is a God, either that God doesn't want me to know it exists, or if it does, it doesn't want me to know it exists yet, or it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But
okay, so that's the same position I have. I didn't express it as thus.
But it's all of this seems a little strange. I don't know. I'm not going to keep going over how strange it is. Hopefully we answered your question, Tommy. I'm going to move on to some other calls.
Yeah,
thanks,
that's fine.
Tommy.
Okay. Thank you.
Happy for you.
Bye, Jenna. Belk.
Bye.
Yeah, I'll also try to stop to just default assuming that anybody that I talk to is necessarily cited, which was an oversight. Aha, pun on my part.